This is the PXN P5, and I am always blown away by high-end controllers with all the features, but I think I'm starting to get more surprised and amazed by budget controllers that have everything. When I got sent this controller and saw the specs, I honestly thought this is gonna be like $60 plus. This is $35. $35, that's less than £30 here in the UK, and this thing is spec'd out to the max. It's got Hall effect joysticks with anti-friction rings. We've got Hall effect triggers, but they also have a hair trigger stop. Now it is not a digital switch, it just kind of stops the analog trigger from being pressed, but it does actuate faster. We've got one thing that everyone wants, and that's 4 back paddles, yes, 4. And yes, you can assign macro to these or button swap or whatever. We've got our classic membrane buttons, but they have really nice travel. They don't get stuck at all and they return really well. We've got dual rumble, which is adjustable as well. We've also got 6-axis motion control or gyro. And we've got tri-mode connectivity. So you've either got dongle connectivity. So there's like a little dongle there that I've plugged into a USB A to C converter to use on my Ally X just there. So you've got the dongle, you've got wired, or you've got Bluetooth or switch mode. It's also got an anti-deadzone setting for the joysticks and also a raw mode so that you can get out of that circular outer dead zone to have true diagonals if you really want. And it's got one feature I have not seen yet and I want to see on every single controller going forward, but there is a little bit of a negative with it. But this controller can be used as a mouse input as well as like left and right click. So with the Ally just here, you don't need any other software. You just need to plug the cable in and you can literally control the mouse and then left and right click as well. It's mental. Yes, there's more. It's also a 1000 hertz polling rate when using the cable. And also it has a 32 input record macro. So yeah, you can assign 32 buttons to one of these back paddles and then it will play it out for you. It also has turbo as well. So yeah, there's probably something I've forgotten as well, but there's so much about this controller for $35, under £30. It's absolutely mental. Let's take a look at it. So this is the P5 by PXN. And yeah, I am shocked by it. They do another color as well. I think it comes in black as well, but feels really nice. It's a solid plastic design. The construction is really like good. There's no shaking or like rattling or anything like that. We do have textured grips on the back as well. And no, these are not rubber. These are plastic. So they won't get all sticky and horrible, which is a win in my book. The whole thing actually feels really decent. You know, like the build quality, again, when I got sent this, I was thinking this is at least $60 with the specs and the feel, like the build quality and everything. But yeah, no, it's like half that price, which is crazy, right? So yeah, really impressed by the fit and feel of it. I mean, it just feels like an Xbox controller to me, but it's a bit more like bubbly and rounded, which is quite nice. There's no like bits that stick into your fingers or anything, like all the edges are smooth, which is really nice. I really like the feel and fit of this controller. Everything seems to be laid out correctly. So we do have their little like settings button thing on the bottom there, which allows us to do a load of different like configurations, which we'll look into in a minute. We've got our D-pad just here, which is kind of clicky and a little bit stiff, I might add, but you know, you've got that kind of Xbox style flip-uppy look, you know, on the older controllers that they used to do before it went to that like dome. But yeah, it's quite nice feeling, you know. I'm never like a D-pad fighting guy. I'm like more of a platformer and stuff, you know. I like my Metroidvanias and stuff. So, you know, it really depends, but we will test this out in, you know, our test in a minute. We've got our joysticks now. I do want to just point out straight away that my unit, which is a pre-release unit, so I can't speak on behalf of the actual like release models, but I've got a slightly clicky joystick. So when I move it around, you can hear it clicking. You won't hear it on camera. It's so subtle, like so subtle. You only really hear it when you've got it right next to your ear and you can kind of hear a little bit of a click. So that's the only like negative, but I think that's unique to my pre-release model. So there we go. The right stick does not have that. And again, it's not affected performance in any way. It's only, you can just kind of hear it. You can't feel it or anything like that. We've got our share button, you know, our like settings and start and home as well. We've got an Xbox layout, but if you connect it to the Switch, then it does like flip the buttons to a Nintendo layout, but obviously you'll still be looking at an Xbox layout. You can't pull these out or anything like that, and they don't change. So bear that in mind. Looking on the top, again, looks very familiar, right, to an Xbox layout. And yeah, it feels like it. I mean, it's a really good design. Why change it, right? The triggers and the bumpers feel really nice. And if I flip these over to, they're pretty stiff actually. You've got to get your nail in there, right? So you're not going to accidentally move it. But yeah, you've got that analog setting, or you've got that sort of more digital input style there, but it's not a micro switch. It's just a stopper. And everything feels consistent. Everything feels consistent. There's nothing that goes, oh, that button's spongy and that one's good. Like none of that. It all feels really nice, which again, at the price point, I'm very surprised by. So well done, PXN. Same with the back paddles. Really consistent. And I find this a struggle for companies where the back paddles are horribly mushy. Like the rest of the controller's good, but the back paddles suck. Not on this one. All really consistent with one another. And I like the layout because it's got this kind of like little like flick up ones and then curved ones around the controller, right? So if you see those back paddles, they kind of like pop out, but these ones round into the horns. And that makes getting to these really easy with your fingers, you know, like you definitely know you're on these ones or these ones. And if you just want to use these, you don't really have any worry about accidentally going too far. Like it's really cool. Like I really like the fit, finish and build quality of this. Very impressed by that. Now inside the box, you do get the receiver, obviously not this USB-A to USB-C adapter, but you do get the cable as well. So we'll go with that first, just to show you this feature, which I think is amazing. So now the controller has connected to the Ally. And what I'm gonna do is press the button just here and then the left stick together. And now look at this. Can you see that? Like that is absolutely mind blowing. Look, 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 I could left click with A and B is right click. Like that is so good. Like why do controllers not do this more often? Like why is this not a thing? This would make it so much easier for us on PC handhelds to be able to navigate and stuff with a controller without the need of another little like keyboard and mouse combo or the help of controller. What is it called? I don't know. I did a video on it, you know, controller something, but there's a software basically in Steam. I've done a whole video about it of how you can make your controller like input as a mouse and keyboard, but that's still a fiddle. This really, really good, like massively good. And it's really responsive. I know it's wired, so you'd expect that because we're in 1000 Hertz mode, right? Polling rate, but it is really responsive. I could happily navigate like this. I wish there was a bit more like configuration for like a keyboard, like trigger or something, like, you know, open up a keyboard or something, and then you could just select it with the mouse. But you could totally go down to accessibility options and go to like keyboard like this. So I suppose what I've just said is a load of rubbish because at least on the Ally, you can do that here. You just go and click on the keyboard and then you're ready to go, right? This is my favorite feature of this controller and I want everyone to copy it. My biggest downside here though is the fact that it only works on wired. So I don't know why that is. I'm not sure why PXN couldn't have got this to work over the dongle, but that is a bit of a letdown for me because I have to play with a dongle. I've got a dog. I can't have cables trailing around on the floor if I'm playing docked on my TV, right? So it's a bit of a shame, but if you're going to be using this wired, then wicked, you know? Like all you have to do is press that settings button and the left trigger, it will vibrate, and now I've turned it off. Epic feature, PXN. Do this on every controller and make it wireless. Okay, let's test out the buttons and stuff in the controller tester just here. So we've got our buttons here. You can see that they respond really well. Everything inputs exactly how you would expect it. And you can see that these are analog triggers. Now, I would say there is a bit of a dead zone on these analog triggers. So if you look, it takes until there before it starts inputting. So there's probably a 10% dead zone. That stops them inputting when you're just kind of naturally resting your weight of your fingers on them. So that's kind of a good thing, but for some people, they probably want it actuating quicker. Now, there is an app. I do want to say that there is an app. I couldn't get it to detect. Maybe it's because I got a pre-release model, or maybe the app's not like supported yet at the time of filming. However, I imagine it will be, you know, it's a big push on the website page for this that yes, it's going to be compatible with their app. It's just at the time of filming here now, today, it doesn't work for me. But I know in that app, you can change dead zones and all that stuff. So I imagine you'll be able to do that with the triggers as well. But yeah, you can see this is an analog trigger. And if I slip it over there, it's now a digital trigger. So it inputs 100% as soon as you touch it. And the dead zone, I'd say, is the same amount. It's about a 10% before it actuates. So yeah, just keep that in mind if you want really quick hair triggers. This might not be for you unless you can get into the app and change it. Now with the D-pad, let's do the rock test, right? So I'm gonna press down and then like rock to the left, it doesn't input. If I rock to the right, it doesn't input either. However, if I really force it, then I can get it to actuate. So I have to push really hard on either direction to be able to actuate that, you know, right or left input as well. But if I'm just naturally pressing it and moving my thumb here, look, I'm not actually actuating it. Oh, a little bit, but I am pressing a bit harder now. But you know, so that's a pretty rock solid D-pad, and I kind of like it. Like I don't dislike this D-pad in any way. So yes, we do have Hall Effect sticks just here, and they're rated for about 6 million cycle lifespan. So massive longevity there. You're much less likely to get drift with Hall Effect as well versus potentiometer sticks. Lower dead zones, faster input rates. So they're just a better joystick module basically for longevity. So these have them. And let's just give them a test. They feel great. There's no sticking or anything like that. They move as I'd expect. If we test the circularity, which doesn't really say a lot, it just means that, yes, it has a circular outer dead zone, right? That's basically all that's saying. We can see the axis here is all 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2 on each one. However, I can turn off dead zone, right? So at the minute, it's got a 10% dead zone, even though when you move the stick, it pretty much moves instantly. If you press and hold both of the sticks down for 5 seconds, the controller will vibrate, and then there we go. And now you can see those numbers have completely moved to like random numbers, and that's because there is no dead zone anymore, and the center of the sticks is slightly off because that inner dead zone has been removed, right? So if you want super high, you know, input, then you can do this. It makes them incredibly sensitive to your movement. So that is a thing. Obviously, you can disable that by pressing both down again for 5 seconds. After a second, it will vibrate. And now it's gone back to that quadruple 0-4 on all axis, right? But there's something else we can do, and that is by pressing and holding the 2 sticks and that button down. So let's just test the circularity again. So yes, we've got a circular outer dead zone. If I press this and then those 2 down. So now what we've effectively done is put it into raw mode. So we have disabled the outer circular dead zone so that we get true diagonals. So now this is going to show that it's not a perfect circle. There we go. So we've got an error rate of about 10%. That's not a bad thing. It just means that it's not a circle, right? That's all that's referring to. And you can see it now overshoots on the corners, on the diagonals, rather than being within that circular. We're now going out and over that axis essentially, so that we've got true diagonals. So in some games, this will give you higher accuracy in the diagonals, and some games, especially retro titles, will need this because all older controllers used to have like a raw outer, you know, it didn't have an outer dead zone. And to disable that, both sticks down together, press the button, it will vibrate. And if I go back to test circularity, boom, back to a circle. I think this is mad for being on a $35, £30 controller, that you've got the option not only to disable dead zone, but also to disable the outer dead zone to be a raw mode. So you can effectively have full raw mode on this or not. And you can do that on the fly without the need of an app or anything like that. This is crazy customization for something this cheap. Now, whilst we're here, I'll show you the turbo here. I normally do it in game, but it's a bit easier to see in this tester, right? So what turbo does is it will press the button for me. So instead of me having to like press like this and wear the button down and also wear my hand strength down and all that kind of stuff, you can activate like auto fire mode, right? Which is called turbo. So you press this button and let's say A. Now when I hold it down, can you see that it's going like it's flicking, you know, it's doing it for me whilst I'm holding it down. But if I let go, it'll stop. If I do the combination again, it now does it for me without me having to actually do anything, right? But you can see it's quite a slow input. Well, you can change that on this one. A lot of controllers don't let you change the input like rate, but this one does. So if I press this button, I've put it on the slowest already, so I'm just going to press right. But if you press right or left whilst holding this button on the right stick, it will change the input method, right? So I'm going to go right. Do you see how now it's gone faster? It vibrates to tell you that I've done that as well. And if I go again, it's now going even quicker. It might not even show on the camera properly because of the shutter speed and how fast this is actually going. If I go again, it's now going like lightning fast. It is going mental, right? So there's 4 modes, like slow, like sort of normal, fast, and then like ultra fast. That's crazy. And you can, you know, dial it back down again if you really want, back down to like a low rate of input, which is pretty cool. And to cancel that out, I'm just going to press that button and A again, and now there's no turbo applied, which is pretty cool. Right, let's jump into a game and I'll show you some of those back paddle features and the macro and all that good stuff. So we are now in Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Everyone go and buy this game if you're into 2D, like, you know, 2.5D platforming games. Essentially, this is an incredible Metroidvania. I absolutely love this game. Just go and get it. It's a phenomenal game. But anyway, we're in the game. Everything feels great, and I can say that these stoppers are really good for games like this where you've got to reflect stuff, right? You've got to parry a lot, because when you've got like an analog stick, you often overshoot and you might mistime it. Whereas when it's more of like a digital input, right, it's really good for parrying stuff. So let's just give it a go. There we go. There we go. You know, I mean, my skills are a bit rubbish at the minute, but there we go. You can parry much easier, I find, than with an analog stick. And you could keep this going for ages if you got the timing right. I'm trying to talk and think and stuff. I'm not playing very well. So I'm just saying that that's a really handy feature, you know. And the same with FPS games. If you want like really quick shooting and like iron sights and stuff, that is a really good feature if you wanted to know like what that's used for, essentially. Okay, so now I've wiped all these buttons from my assignment, so nothing is on them, but it's really easy to assign stuff. So let's take the first button. I'm gonna press this button and that back paddle at the same time. I'm gonna press A once and then hit that back paddle again. And now I've got jump on the back. But this has true button swap, which I really like. And what that means is that I've actually reassigned that button or copied it to the back. So it's not just like a record of an input. It actually truly works. So if I go over here and do a short tap, do you see how he's jumping a little bit? If I press and hold, do you see how he's jumping like really high? That means that it's an actual like replication of the button, which is awesome. I really like that you've got a true button swap there. Really like that. And you can do that on pretty much anything across all 4 back paddles. You could even assign the same button across all of them if you really, really wanted to, right? And that's wicked. What I like to do in games is put L3 and R3 onto the back paddles, because I don't like pushing sticks whilst I'm trying to run around and aim. So I often do L3 on the left and R3 on the right. So that's one thing you can do. You can't assign turbo to these back paddles. You cannot do that, unfortunately. So just bear that in mind. But what we can do is a 32 input macro record, which is insane. Now, if you exceed that 32 limit, it will just automatically save it, like, and cancel it out, right? But let's just do one for an example. So I'm going to press this back left one and that, and I'm going to run around and, you know, do whatever. I'm going to do some of this and whatever, you know, there we go. And then I'm going to press that button again, right? And now I've pressed it once, and he's even doing the inputs of my direction, and he's following it through since I've changed location. If I press that again, he's going to do that whole macro record of everything I've just done, right? And saved onto that back paddle, which is insane. The only thing is you can't do turbo onto that, so you can't have it like reoccurring, right? So one thing I didn't try, actually, because they didn't tell you could do it. Some controllers let you double tap it, and then no, okay. So double tapping it cancels it out. So it starts it and then it cancels it out. So that's one thing that you can do. If you're in the middle of a run and you want to cancel it, just press it again and it will stop it. Now, to unassign the back paddles, what you do is the same as record, right? So instead of pressing anything to assign, you just press it once and now it's unassigned. And that's pretty much my overview of everything this can do. I've not had a single problem with this controller. My only negatives, and I'm sorry PXN, I have to give negatives, is my unit, which I assume is because it's a pre-release unit, is the fact that the left joystick clicks. You know, you can't notice it, but if you listen and you've got no sound on, you can hear it, but it doesn't impede the gaming experience. I think it's just my unit that has this issue. And the other negative, I suppose, is the fact that that really cool mouse feature where you can turn this into a mouse and left and right click is only available when wired. I wish that that feature was available wireless, because that would be game changing. Now, please PXN, make that feature wireless in future iterations, because that would be really cool. Other than that, I genuinely, I can't think of anything bad to say about this. $35. $35, that's like less than £30 here in the UK. That is insane. What happened to budget controllers being rubbish? Maybe we need companies to make rubbish controllers again. Because they're getting too good. They are getting too good for how cheap they are. Before, you'd spend $30 on a controller if you didn't like someone. If you got a friend coming over and you're like, yeah, give them the rubbish one because, you know, whatever, right? But now you can spend $35 and this could be your main controller. If you're on a budget, these kind of controllers are wicked. They can do everything. You've got those 4 back paddles, you've got Hall Effect anti-drift joysticks, you've got Hall Effect triggers with like digital like hair trigger stoppers, you've got an app, you've got all sorts of stuff. You've got gyro as well, you've got mouse input when wired, 1000 hertz polling rate. There's so much that this can do for the price point. It's an absolute win. Like PXN, you've done it. The P5 is wicked. I really like this controller. So there we have it. That is our review of the PXN P5. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you've liked this video, then like this video, leave us a comment, subscribe, of course, and become a member where you can talk to me and AJ over on our private Discord. And talking about AJ, make sure you stay here to see our news and also our podcast as well. Bye.